Crows are well known for being headstrong and mischievous, and this button-eyed crow doll certainly caused a bit of mischief as I was making her. When my buttons went missing, it seemed she had a very clear idea of how she wanted to look, and she wasn't going to accept anything less. If you just found me, welcome. My name's Jo. I'm a full-time artist based on a narrowboat in Wales. As I've never made a bird doll like this before, I've had to completely rethink the pattern for the head and make a template for the wings to replace the arms. I want the wings to be fairly flat but still have a bit of structure, so I've ironed some lightweight interfacing onto one side. So when these are turned, they'll be a little bit more rigid than they would otherwise. I figured I could do some sort of top stitching on those later to give the impression of flight feathers, but we'll come back to that later. This is a black cotton sheeting fabric I bought last week. It's a little bit different to what I'm used to working with, so I might have to adjust the shape of the head a bit, but we'll see how it goes. I thought that black polyester staple fibre would be the most suitable stuffing for this fabric, as it stuffs nice and firmly and it comes in black, so you're not going to get any light coloured stuffing showing through. But I can't seem to get it to go into the pointed beak evenly. It's like the fabric feels a bit slippery and it doesn't have much give in it, so the stuffing won't seem to stay where I put it. I switched to standard polyfill and then that seems to be going in a lot easier. Every brand of fabric behaves differently, so it's always good to have a few alternatives for stuffing. And be aware that the size and shape of the doll might come out a bit different depending on how much the fabric stretches. I quite like how this shape's turned out though, so I'm going to stick with this one. I initially wanted to make wired legs with crow feet, but I didn't have the right kind of wire to hand, so instead of overthinking it and having her sitting around for weeks, I decided to make bead jointed human legs. I definitely want to make crow feet for another doll in the future though. I've got so many ideas for different kinds of dolls I want to have a go at, so if that interests you, please make sure you hit the like button and subscribe so my videos keep showing up in your feed. I was undecided whether to add top stitching on the wings by hand or just machine sew it, but I really want that lovely chunky rustic feel, so I decided to hand stitch it with some top stitch thread. My embroidery skills are a little rusty, and about halfway into the first wing I was kind of starting to regret my decision, but once I got into a rhythm it flowed a lot easier and I actually started to have fun. I've picked out some lovely polished gunmetal buttons for the eyes. There's no shading needed on the black fabric, but I am going to paint some detail on later in acrylics. The button eyes are fairly straightforward for this one as they're on opposite sides of the head, so I can kind of stitch between them. I'm using Gutterman top stitch thread for all the jointing and hand stitching. As always, there will be some links to tools and materials in the description. If you've watched my videos before, you'll know I usually attach the head first and do this bit later, but I'm constructing this doll a little bit differently. There's going to be no hair to hide stitches or button joints under, so I'll fasten the thread off just by the hole at the bottom. Then I'm going to use that hole to make a fixed joint and stitch the head onto the neck. I ladder stitch all the way around the neck to make sure the head is nice and secure and there are no gaps left anywhere. I'm positioning the head as I sew it, keeping it on a slight tilt so she doesn't end up looking too stiff and robotic. I fasten that off with a couple of stitches at the back, then I can start painting. Painting is the most fun part for me. This is where I can start to see my dolls take on a personality and come to life. This one is quite different to anything I've made before, so I'm a little bit excited about it. I'm painting the beak in artist acrylic paints with some fabric medium mixed in. I start with a dark grey base coat, then I'll build up the detail over the top. I do want to do a bit of contouring with this, so I add a slow dry gel to stop the acrylic drying too quickly before I can blend the shades together. I'd usually draw a line detail around the eyes in black fine liner pens, but obviously that's not going to work for this one, so I'm painting it on with white acrylic. Painted lines are a little bit bolder. They give the doll more of a folk art sort of feel, which I think looks really cute. I'm painting some boots to coordinate with the rest of the doll. I think I'll just add some line detail to one of them. Asymmetry has always been a feature of my work. In general, whenever I'm adding detail, I'll paint a more intricate design on one side and keep the other side simple. I don't try and match left and right, I just go with what looks and feels right to me. I found some lovely black cotton broderie anglaise trim for the dress. I'm not sure how well it shows up on camera, but the embroidery detail on this is gorgeous, and it's lightweight enough to create a full skirt without being too bulky around the waist. Now I was going to button joint the wings with some black 10mm buttons, but I can't find them anywhere. I think she's trying to tell me she wants something different. Maybe she'll be happy with some silver tone metal beads. I take the thread right through from one shoulder to the other as I would with a button joint. I'm really not happy with how that's sitting with the beads. I'll have to see what other buttons I have. I have some tiny black buttons which could work, but it looks like the holes are slightly different sizes, so the needle's going through one way but it won't go back through the other hole. Maybe I can enlarge it a bit with the bead reamer. This often works when you just need to enlarge the hole a little bit. The trouble is, if you have to file it too much, you end up with a visible rough edge and you have the hassle of trying to polish it so it looks the same as the other hole. I've tried filing this a couple of times and the needle still isn't going through, and it's going to look untidy if I do any more, so I'm going to have to find something else. Okay, so I think she really wants something shiny. These metal buttons are 12mm, so they're a little bit bigger than I'd normally use for jointing. I think I originally bought them to use as eye buttons, but they were too small for that. They have an interesting Greek key design around the rim, so I think they could look quite pretty against those black wings. Now all she needs is a necklace. I've picked out some glass seed beads with a very crow-like iridescent coating, and of course she needs a shiny trinket. If you've made it this far into the video, leave me a key emoji in the comments so I can see who's here. I've named this little one Carrie Blackwing. And in case you were wondering, the buttons I was originally going to use for the wings turned up on my desk as soon as I finished making them. Spooky gothic dolls aren't always dressed in black. I made a pale ghost girl recently that I think you're going to love, so go watch that one now and I'll see you next time. Bye!